Race for mayor is now very much in the home stretch. By this time next week, we will know who is the next mayor of New York City. Joining us now, Meena Bose from Hofstra University to break it all down and see exactly where things stand with early voting now underway. Meena, thank you so much for joining us. The race for mayor, what are we going to do when this race is over? I don't know what else to talk about.
Well, we shift from elections to governance, and there'll be a lot to talk about there. No
Yeah.
matter who will be the next mayor.
That's right. We get to complaining. That is the problem with being mayor. You know, once you're mayor, everybody's got something to gripe about. You know, once you win the job, then the hard work starts. So let's sort of take the temperature of where things stand right now. We've seen mega turnout for early voting, and of course, every candidate is trying to spin that into why that is good news for them. But when you really dig into the numbers, it seems like you can pick a narrative to fit your predicted, your potential desired outcome. There's good news and bad news in there for each candidate. Let's sort of walk through, first off, how much do you think it means that we have seen such high turnout for early voting? Because I do just want to say, from my perspective, I love early voting because it is so easy. I go there, I'm in and out, on my schedule, 3 to 11. I get to breeze in there at, 11 o'clock in the morning. Last time I did that, I mean, it took me just minutes. It's so convenient. Is there more than convenience, do you think, driving people to the polls this race?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, there's convenience without a doubt. Look at the weather today, right? If this had been election day, if this had been Halloween, that would have been. We've had issues where bad weather has depressed turnout. Think about Iowa caucuses actually, we've also seen times when people braved very bad weather to vote in those. So having early voting is helpful. I think some of that is convenience, but I think there's also enthusiasm. At the same time, we have to temper that with a lot of people do like to vote on election day. So it's, we're now in this final stretch. We're looking at the latest polls that show for the mayor's race that Mamdani is still ahead, actually in kind of lower double digits than he was. If you kind of play the number, the Fox poll, if it's a two-way race, then it drops to 10%. But again, ultimately, every election is about turnout, and in an election where there have been so many surprises. I mean, if we go back to the Democratic primary in June, before that, Mamdani was behind significantly until the really just getting very close to the primary, and turnout for the primary was close to what the general election was 4 years ago for the mayoral race. So we really have to see, early voting, high turnout is a good sign for voting. What it means for either candidate, I would just say it just remains to be seen.
Yeah, it definitely highlights what a different election this is, because last time around was basically the standard New York City race for mayor. Whoever wins the Democratic primary goes on to win the election, so I guess there wasn't that much intrigue when it came to actual election day. Of course, the three-way race this time around giving a lot more intrigue to it, even though, as you did mention, Mamdani continues to have a sizable lead. And, one of the things I would love to get your perspective on is we continue to hear so much talk. Obviously, Andrew Cuomo continues to hammer, we need to get Sliwa out of this race. We need to make it a two-man race. The reality is, though, those ballots have been printed, and when they go into the voting booth, Adams is going to be on it. Sliwa's going to be on it, regardless of if Sliwa were to drop out this second, he would still be on the ballot. Do you think Cuomo, and to a lesser extent the media itself, is sort of giving too much credence to the idea of how someone getting out of the race at this point could change the dynamics, given the fact that at the end of the day, they're still going to be on the ballot when people head to the polls?
Well, I mean, to have any candidate drop out at this late date, it could make a difference. And it's really, it is, you don't want to overstate that. And of course, anyone who's voted already or who would vote for the names on the ballot, you don't get a do-over with voting. Once you've voted, it's done. You don't get a second chance. But nevertheless, positioning can make a difference. And this is a race where, obviously Andrew Cuomo feels strongly enough that he decided to run as an independent in the race after he lost the Democratic primary. So I think he's doing everything he can to chip away at the lead in the polls that Mamdani has.
It's interesting. After that last debate, we saw Cuomo jet off to MSG, and he was sitting courtside with Mayor Adams, who, behind closed doors, they hashed it out, Adams endorsing Cuomo. And they've been playing nice together on the campaign trail, although there was certainly an interesting moment today when Cuomo and Adams were side by side, and Cuomo made a statement to the effect of, we haven't had a competent mayor since Bloomberg, while he's standing next to the current mayor who just gave him his endorsement. So it shows you, things are very interesting in a way we haven't seen around here in a little bit.
That's right, and certainly there were a lot of questions about whether Mayor Adams would suspend his campaign. I mean, that came fairly late, just before early voting started. It seems to be a bridging of interests rather than a kind of a genuine affection, if you will.
Yeah,
or,
yes, it's very real politics.
Yeah,
Adams got an eye towards the future too, of course, because he's going to have a job after this, and certainly there's all sorts of pressure, like which we've seen, put on Curtis Lee, who actually quit his radio job, under all the pressure from John Catsimatidis and other billionaires who he was about this close to naming, who are, trying to essentially, as he put it, bribe him to get out of the race. Nevertheless, here we are. The three-man race continues. Now, let's walk through, if these dynamics were to hold, if let's pretend tonight was election night, these numbers held, how big of a win would Mamdani need to have, do you think, in order to have any sort of, real momentum dynamic? You know the word I'm looking for.
The mandate?
Mandate,
kind of the
exactly.
Mandate
Thank you. Mandate, exactly. Yeah. How big of a win do you think he would need to have for everyone to put the raw nerves of this election behind them?
I don't know that number is there. I'm not sure, frankly. I think that the positions in this in the mayoral race are so strong, and you have some voters who would never vote for Mamdani. You have some voters who would never vote for Cuomo. And then, of course, the FLIWA voters are there, too. And then, others who maybe are not satisfied with any of the three. I think the question will really be, the way your elections work in the United States, winner take all, right? The person who wins the race. And so whether it's by a margin of less than 1% or a margin of 10% or a margin of 20%, it's kind of a debate, the kind of popular discussions, what's the mandate? There's a lot of research that shows that mandates are actually, they're very popular to discuss after an election, but they don't necessarily translate into governance. It's difficult to govern by executive power alone. That's not to understate the power of the mayor, but I think that the question will be after Election Day is, how does the victor use their win to build coalitions and follow through on their promises?
Yeah, and it's sort of touching on what we spoke about a minute ago about Mayor Bloomberg. Of course, one of the big storylines of this race has been big money lining up to do everything they could to try to stop Mamdani from winning. Of course, one of his key tenets is raising taxes on those over $1 million, although they have certainly other concerns as well regarding the future of the city. And I feel like a few weeks ago, there was sort of an outreach from Mamdani to sort of, go to the power brokers. There was some talk. He was, being charming. He was maybe making some headway. But when you really look at it, it's where they're putting their money. And we saw a report this week that Bloomberg had just dumped $1.5 million into a super PAC in an attempt to stop Mamdani. So clearly there are limits to that charm offensive that he had been on.
True, but there are also limits to the power of money. Former Mayor Bloomberg was a candidate in the 2020 presidential race, right? It didn't go very far.
Yeah.
And was actually elected to 3 terms as mayor, kind of, right? Was able to kind of change the law to be able to run for that 3rd term. So money is certainly important. Actually, Mamdani and Cuomo in the primaries were both doing very well, though Mamdani had a much broader base of supporters, which was significant. But money alone is not decisive at this point. Certainly, without a doubt, I would say that Mamdani's surprise win in the primary has given a visibility that Cuomo is kind of pushing back against very hard.
Yeah, and as a political scientist, I'll go to break in a second here, but as a political scientist, we all almost mispronounced Mamdani's name. You just did it there. But we've seen Andrew Cuomo obviously deliberately mispronounce his name the entire campaign. Talk about the risk reward on that. Does that have the potential to alienate as many people as it would apparently be titillating to?
Well, I won't presume to say that that's what Cuomo was doing, that it was on purpose, but, obviously you should know your opponent's name and you should be able to pronounce it correctly. And so I think that either will reinforce kind of what if you're very anti-Mamdani and you want to support, and then that leads you to Cuomo, then that will reinforce it. If you are supporting Mamdani, then it certainly doesn't doesn't build any kind of warm feelings, and it's unclear how that would affect independent, undecided voters.
Yeah, it is going to be fascinating when we finally get to dig through the final numbers, see what worked, what didn't. All right, Meena, we're going to take a quick 2-minute break here. We're going to come right back and finish out Newsroom Live in just a minute with more on the race for New York City Mayor. We'll do a little bit on the race for governor in New Jersey, which is also a super tight race. We appreciate it. We'll be right back. More Newsroom Live in just a moment. Back to Meena Bose, our professor from Hofstra. Let's talk a little bit about the New Jersey race for governor. Like the race for mayor, this is a very tight race. Of course, unlike the race for mayor, this is a two-person race for all practicals. Walk us through where you think things are right now. And I also want to bring in to our discussion the idea that we are in the midst of a government shutdown. It seems like that might be even more meaningful in a race for governor, especially if you've got a congressperson running. How do you think that affects what we're going to see in New Jersey? Because that was a razor close finish last time around, Citarelli just losing out to Governor Murphy.
Correct. And the New Jersey governor's race, like the Virginia governor's race, those are the races to watch because they'll bring clues to how the two parties might fare in the congressional elections next year. In New Jersey, Congresswoman Sherrill continues to be ahead in the polls. It's single digits. The Fox 5 poll, I think, is just outside the margin of error, about 7 points. But this is a race where, again, very much, I think it will come to, obviously every election comes down to turnout, but there is certainly the possibility for both sides to make a significant dent and in their favor or to, unwittingly help the opposition in the next few days. Without a doubt, I think you can see that Citarelli and Sherrill have very different positions after their contentious debate. There have been questions about a lawsuit, I guess, that Citarelli is threatening to file.
Right, but do you think that lawsuit, that's more of a threat at this point, right? Do you think that's actually going to come to pass at this point in the race?
I guess I think he does have. I think he's allowed to pursue it. It seems like it might be more positioning, but you don't know. If he's able to make a case, we'll see if there's standing. But the big question here is which party, whichever candidate wins gives their party a big boost. And the last race was close. The presidential race was close in New Jersey. The Democrats went Democratic, but Donald Trump made significant gains. So this will matter for the midterm elections too. Yeah, what happens in 25 is a precursor.
No doubt. And not only the shutdown, but of course that tunnel going from New York to New Jersey, that $18 billion pulled by President Trump. So it's basically, you've seen Jack Citarelli say, you need someone who can disagree with him, but be basically within the family, whereas Mikey Sherrill obviously is going to have a more oppositional relationship with him. But it'll be interesting to see, again, how much that has an impact on the final numbers that we see in that race. Let's just, close up with where we are in the race for mayor. We've got 1 more minute left with you. The race is how it's been for the past several weeks at this point. It's a 3-person race, and Mamdani has a sizable lead. It does not appear at this point, there's not going to be a gaffe in a debate or anything like that. What could change the shape of this race at this point, or is it really just a wild card of more voters turning out from a different neighborhood or something like that would be what would have the potential to create an upset here?
There's always the risk or the possibility, of someone saying something that is stated poorly, that is misconstrued, some sort of a failure of action or something, things like that, They can happen. There are external events that have happened in previous campaigns, announcements about investigations. If you think back to the 2016 presidential race and emails, It doesn't seem like anything like that is underway at this point, but you just don't know. So ultimately, I would say it's hard to narrow down to say that, this district or this part of this borough in New York City, the votes here will be decisive. We'll have a better idea after the election. Yeah. But at this point, it is all about getting out those voters. And really, at this point, it's a sprint. It's no longer a marathon. It's getting to election day.
Yeah, and to prove that, Mamdani's got a campaign event tonight at midnight, I think, to sort of show his youthful vigor, maybe in comparison to make that contrast with his fellow competitors in the race for mayor. Meena Bose, we appreciate it so much from Hofstra University. Thank you so much.